Today we're going to be talking about some right triangle practice. So our question says, solve for x in each of the following triangles. Round final answers to 2 decimal places. And there are 4 examples of right angle triangles on our sheet that we are going to practice solving. So we have learned up to this point 4 different ways of solving for a side or an angle in a right angle triangle. And they are Pythagorean theorem, sine ratio, cosine ratio, and tangent ratio. And it's hard sometimes to know which one to pick and how you know when to use each different method. So Pythagorean theorem is something that we only use when we have sides. So if you have side lengths and you don't have any angles and you don't want to find an angle, that's when I would use Pythagorean theorem. You need to have at least 2 of the 3 sides in order to be able to solve, but we're really just looking at, we have some side lengths, we're solving for a side length, there are no angles involved. In order to use sine, cosine, and tangent, you have to either have or want to know an angle. So if you don't have an angle in the question, so either you don't have one that's marked with a number or you don't have one that's marked with a variable, then we wouldn't be using sine, cos, and tan. So if you're only looking for side lengths and you don't have any angles in the question, that's usually a Pythagorean theorem question. If you are trying to solve for something and there's either an angle given or an angle that you're trying to find, chances are you're probably going to use sine, cos, or tan. So we're going to jump in with our first example. So I have a right angle triangle, and all of these methods only work with right angle triangles. And I notice that I have 2 side lengths, and I want to find the 3rd side. So when I'm trying to figure out a method to use, I can only use sine, cos, and tan if I have an angle. And since we don't know either of these 2 angles, I cannot use sine, cos, or tan. I do technically have an angle. I have that right angle, but I'm not allowed to use that as the angle in my question. So because I have 2 sides and I want to find the 3rd side, this is where I would use Pythagorean theorem. So the formula for Pythagorean theorem is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And a, b, and c are just the 3 different sides in my triangle. C is always the hypotenuse, which is my longest side. So that would be the 19. And then a and b are the other 2 sides. It doesn't matter which one's which. I think I'm going to let the x be a and the 16 be b. And then I'm just going to substitute those numbers into the equation. So I get x squared plus 16 squared equals 19 squared. So x squared, I can't work out, but 16 squared I definitely can. So you can either use your exponent button on your calculator or do 16 times 16. 16 squared is 256. 19 squared, or 19 times 19, is 361. Now at this point, I have the 2 numbers, but there's an equal sign in between them, so I can't just add those together. What I am going to do is try to cancel out that plus 256 by subtracting 256 from both sides to get that x squared equals 361, take away 256, which is 105. And then to cancel out a square, we do the opposite operation, which is a square root. So on my calculator, I'm going to do the square root of 105. Now I have a square root button. Yours might be like a second function of something. And I get 10.24. And then the next number is a 6. So that's going to push that up to 25. So it's going to approximately be 10.25. And we're solving for a side, and all the sides are marked as meters, so that is in meters. So it's 10.25 meters. We are going to do the next example in the next video.